everyone, I'm Matt Williamson, home for the day, refreshed, recording this Monday afternoon. Steelers are off today, but they will be back at it with padded practices on Tuesday. The acclimation period is now over, so we're into true hitting, full-blown training camp. Figured this a perfect day on a day off for the Steelers to do a mailbag. I'm behind on those, gotten a lot of good questions from you guys. But also wanted to mention that the last padded practice, or the last acclimation period practice, very spirited. I did a podcast a little while back for you guys talking about how I think that they've really gone out of their way to, quote, build a bully. You know, go get tough guys with some arrogance and swagger, Ramsey, Metcalf, Rodgers. That's starting to really show up on the practice field. Pride. Another note, I did that O-line podcast yesterday. Some concerns, depth issues, cited some numbers. And I guess I misspoke about the Andersons. Calvin's a tackle, Spencer's a guard. I guess I get them mixed up. Spencer is the one that's been running at the left guard position from Siamalu, the guy that the Steelers drafted a couple years ago. And they like him. And I'll also be honest, I also wanted to throw in there too, the tackle Cook shows some things. You know, I mean, I'm not saying he's great, but I do think Dylan Cook has some interest, some traits, and some ability that I didn't just mention in that podcast. Anyway, let's get into these questions. Rob Marsico asks, how do you think the Steelers play the Ravens this year, given their schematic shift towards man? Obviously harder to play man versus Lamar. I'm not saying you play it all game because that would be asinine, but we could see some more cover zero than normal and trust the blitz to contain him. It's funny you bring this up because I know people too often look at the Steelers as if they are not a creative defensive group of coaches. And there's a lot of tape yet last year to support that argument. Now, I think that is drastically changing. And I think history has also shown that Tomlin and Austin have good defensive minds. Let's put it that way. Lamar. What's interesting, there's been a lot of studies lately that he is so elite at this point that he is basically an A or an A+ across the board against all defenses, all strategies, except one, which you happen to bring up. And that is a lot of man coverage and blitz. He's still really good against it. Maybe he's a B+. You know, if that's his biggest weakness is one thing, he's a B+ as opposed to an A. That's how good Lamar is right now, by the way. I mean, as a pocket pass, I'm not talking about his running. I'm just talking about as a thrower, a passer of the football. And I think we all know that over his career, the Steelers have had more success against Lamar than any other team. Well, they were at the forefront of playing man coverage and blitzing him. Now, I could see why and that's a gutsy move, you know, to your question, because, you know, you're like, oh, that'd be asinine, you know, and the logic, folks, I think this goes without saying, but we'll say it anyways. If you're playing a lot of man coverage, you have defensive backs and coverage people turning their back to Lamar. Well, it's hard to get him on the ground when he scrambles if your back is to him and you're running downfield away from him. See what I'm saying? And also, if the blitz doesn't get home, he steps up, there's 5 guys behind him and 6 guys in front of him who aren't looking at them. Well, that sure seems like a lot of explosive runs. But what the Steelers mix really well with it, and this has actually been some of the Ravens' playoff issues, is people are catching on. And I bet the Ravens see a lot more of this concept this season. What the Steelers do well, though, is they keep him contained in the pocket. The Cam Haywards of the world are tremendous at, even though he's awesome from the pocket, if you're playing man coverage, you can't have him scrambling and running. So the Cam Haywards of the world at least keep him in the pocket, behind the line of scrimmage a pretty high percentage of the time. And the Ravens don't have a lot of great man beaters in terms of their receivers, because I don't think they expected to get much man because their quarterback's so athletic. See what I'm saying? There's like all these layers. And it's part of the reason the Steelers know the Ravens and the Ravens know the Steelers and blah, 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 blah. And it's a little thing, but like DeAndre Hopkins traditionally can beat man. You know, it's not the other guys stink against it, but it's not their specialty. Zay Flowers, Bateman, the tight ends, you know what I mean? So really good question. All that being said, to make it a little less Ravens specific, well, even let's keep it Ravens specific. Like, I bet you'll see Ramsey man-to-man against Likely or Andrews. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want Beanie Bishop doing that. You didn't have that slot player last year to pull that off against a 240, 255-pound tight end that can run routes. So I do think they're well-equipped, better than ever at least, to deal with what I think is one of the best offenses in the entire league. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the game is being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on MLB, UFC, and boxing to tennis and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. More really good questions. This one's from Paul. Pickens or Minkah? Who will the Steelers miss most in 2025? This will sound disrespectful to Minkah because I still really adore his game. And what he can do as a deep middle defender is pretty rare in this league. But to me, it's definitely Pickens. And I kind of knew he had to go. And after the fact, I know he had to go. But boy, would you rather, for week one against the Jets, would you rather have this exact lineup with Pickens in it? Ooh. Or that third round pick? You know what I mean? Like, I think he's going to have a monster season for Dallas, by the way. And he's got a lot to prove. However, there's bigger picture things in play here. I do think there's another layer to getting a receiver. Clearly, in the locker room, behind the scenes, they'll way miss Minkah more. Frankly, it's addition by subtraction getting Pickens out of the building. He was not liked. But on the field, he's scary, man. And that's not that Minkah isn't. It's just I can make up for things schematically at the safety position, and we've broken down this Ramsey trade to no end, and the pass rush and other additions on defense. You can get by with average safeties. But if you would have a Pickens to this offense, that would be pretty frightening. My man Bruce asks, is it me or does it seem like Howard has some momentum in that building? Taking the threes versus the ones and 7-on-7, being smart with the ball, supposedly getting first team reps soon from a comment. Rodgers is a QB1, but doesn't seem like they're really kicking. Doesn't seem like they're really kicking the tires on him. I assume he means Howard. And we talked about it on the air yesterday. 7 shots is like their big thing. You know, I mean, that's like the best reps you can get. It's pretty rare for them to have a rookie quarterback, unless it's Pickett in the first round, but a mid-late round quarterback getting any reps of those 7. Rodgers always gets 3, and Howard always gets 1. So every time they do 7 shots, he at least has a say in the outcome. So yes, I do think they are very happy, very intrigued with him. Could he turn into the next Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott that is a 5th round pick or later? It's possible. It's possible. I mean, I have not slammed the door on that. But a lot of what I'm going to tell you probably won't blow you away. In today's NFL, and my tune has changed on this, and frankly, this is what I was a little critical of the Steelers when they drafted Pickett, is I need a quarterback to, if if I can pick my quarterback, it needs to be some with some superhero traits. Josh Allen. We just talked about Lamar. Obviously Mahomes, Burrow. I mean, like guys that have rare physical gifts. Howard doesn't have that. And if you go to camp, it was very obvious at OTAs when I'm right next to them, he throws the ball the poorest of the three. Rodgers, on the other hand, you say, oh, I see some at least glimpses of superhero passing ability. And he obviously had some of the best passing ability ever in his peak. So how I've described Howard, and I think if you gave Omar and Tomlin and those guys truth serum, they would agree with me that he is the perfect guy. He's super smart, well-liked, and he is doing well. To be, I always keep calling him, hopefully, the caddy for next year's first-round pick. You draft Tiger Woods next year, and his caddy has already been in the league. That dude that you draft remembers Howard from a year before him, winning the national title, has a year under his belt in this offense, knows where the cafeteria is in St. Vincent's, is smart as could be, certainly could fill in or hold down the fort. And by the way, Rudolph's under contract for next year too, until the quarterback is ready that you hope has superpowers. Maybe even if he's a raw guy that doesn't even start right away. And people talk about Howard like he's a future coach. And like that was Jason Garrett with Aikman. That was Frank Reich with Jim Kelly. Those guys wanted to be NFL head coaches. That's great. If he turns into something like that, that's a home run. Steelers Blitz asks, what's the technical advantage of Y.A. Black lining up at a 3 technique instead of the nose? They seem adamant to play him there instead of at the nose, which seems like his more natural position. It's funny because my man Chris and I were chatting about this over a cold beverage the other night because we watched his Iowa tape, and I'll get to that in a minute. Steelers draft him, and I immediately think big, strong, perfect nose tackle makeup, run stuffer, takes 2 guys to move him. Then the D-line coach, Carl Dunbar, sits down with us, and I asked him the same thing. You're looking at him more as nose, or more of and he said, no, we're going to keep him where he's at the 3-4 defensive end. And I just didn't believe him. I just went, okay, sure, coach, that's fine. That's okay. We'll see in camp. But then again, Chris and I were talking through this last night or a couple nights ago. He's never played nose. I mean, the way that Iowa's defense was structured, kind of like Saragusa and Washington and those guys that used to just cover up Ray Lewis. They want 2 big-bodied guys as opposed to 1 Casey Hampton over the center. So he's never seen the game from that perspective, attacking a snapper, 2-gapping over a center. And I think they just don't want to mess with what he knows how to do well yet. That's the part to me is it's yet. Because Benton looks bigger and stronger, but I still would like to see less nose reps from him. Traditional nose reps, you know what I mean? And I do think Black is the obvious guy to make that easier on him. But he hasn't done it yet. So, again, we're 4 practices in, none of which even has pads. Let's revisit this in a week and see if he's taking 20% of his snaps at the nose. You know what I mean? Like, why don't you try a nose, youngster? Oh, he did all right. Do it again, How about in the preseason game? Do a whole series at the nose. So that still could be coming. But he's not done it. Kind of be like asking a center or a tackle to play center. You know what I mean? That's all I got. Really good stuff today. You guys have had some great questions. Tomorrow, I'm driving up in the morning. There'll be 5 or 6 days in a row of padded, heated practice, backs on backers. I'll be recording from my crappy dorm room, frankly. And it won't sound as good. My apologies. I just don't have any other options. And I assume there'll be plenty to talk about from then on out. I assume I'll record one Tuesday night after practice will be my next one. All right, cool. See you.